Hello, my name is Professor Ann Cahill. I teach philosophy at Elon University. I've taught there for over a dozen years. And every year I've taught at Elon University, I've taught a class called Critical Thinking. Critical Thinking is a class that's taught in lots of universities across the United States. And because it's taught in so many universities, there are lots and lots of textbooks, which I used to use in teaching critical thinking. But I have, in recent years, gotten rid of the textbooks, and instead, I've taught the course in a series of 10 cumulative steps. 10 steps that are skill-based, so that each student moves through them at their own pace. I've been inspired in this pedagogy by martial arts, which I took a little bit of when I was a graduate student. And I love the way that martial arts was taught. It had a couple of structural aspects of it that I really appreciated. One was that you were working on a certain set of skills at every belt level. And when your teacher, your sensei, said that you were ready, that was the only time that you actually took a test, that you were actually assessed for whether you could get your brown belt with a stripe, for example. And I thought it would be great if philosophy were taught in this way too. Not to have pre-scheduled quizzes. Oh, the quiz is coming up on Tuesday, so you need to know the material by Tuesday. But rather to have the assessment materials to be scheduled according to each individual student's learning pattern. So what I've done with this critical thinking material is I've really boiled it down to the very basics about how to understand, evaluate, and construct arguments. That's the heart of many, not all, but many critical thinking courses. How does one tell whether an argument is persuasive? How does one build an argument that is persuasive or should be to a reasonable audience? So in this pedagogy, what I'm going to do with you is work through 10 discernible cumulative skills. Each one demands the other. You can't evaluate an argument until you understand it, for example. And as we work through the skills, your fluency in argumentation is going to increase. You're going to become much better at identifying arguments that should persuade you. You're going to be much better at identifying arguments that are clearly not persuasive, not reasonable. And then, assuming you get to the later steps, you're going to be good at developing your own arguments that should persuade others. Now, why are these skills necessary? Philosophy has a somewhat justified reputation for being a little pie in the sky. Apparently, philosophy is what men who wear tweed and smoke pipes and have beards do at the top of mountains. And we talk about things like the being of being. And actually, I think all that stuff is great. I think that part of philosophy is great, even though I don't smoke a pipe and I don't wear too much tweed and I don't have a beard. But philosophy is also a very practical skill, especially in this day and age. There are so many arguments, so many attempts to persuade us, sometimes of mundane things, to take this shampoo over another, sometimes of terrifically important things. Who are going to be our leaders? Sometimes of overarching principles that have significantly important ramifications. How much regulation should we have in businesses that cross cultures, geographical boundaries, and political structures? What these 10 steps do is give you an objective, fair way of evaluating any argument, regardless of its source, regardless of whether you tend to agree with the conclusion of that argument. These are questions that can be asked of any argument that is presented to you. And it is their very universal applicability, it is their very fairness that make them so powerful. So here's what we're going to do. For each step, I'm going to present the material to you, explain to you what the skill for that step is, how to do it, and then for each step you will have exercises that you can practice on. And when your instructor looks at your work and says, great, you've really got step 1, you've really understood step 3, that's when and only then will you take the quiz to certify that you know that, and then you'll be ready to move on. Note that each quiz is going to be cumulative with just a couple of exceptions. That is, for step 4, you're going to be asked to do work that is associated with step 3 and step 2. Part of the power I find of the martial arts pedagogy is that it requires that you maintain skills. Not only that you acquire them, but that you maintain them over time. Critical thinking is really not about knowledge. It's not about getting a set of facts and figures under your belt. It's really about habituation into a certain set of skills that's going to be helpful in virtually any profession, and certainly is going to be helpful in the ever more complex world of global citizenship. So let's get started with step one.